Hello and welcome to this very special edition of Nature on One, coming to you today from Jim Wilson's beautiful garden here in Cobh in County Cork, as we continue our coverage of the Great Big Garden Birdwatch. If you've been listening to RTÉ Radio One throughout the day, you will have heard many of the programmes dip in and out of the live stream from Jim's garden, where we have a camera trained on the hanging feeder, and you can see all the comings and goings of the birds feeding from the hanging feeder there. It's really terrific. It runs from dawn until dusk, and it's available there every day for the next few weeks. Garden birds are without question the most visible wildlife most of us encounter every single day. They're fluttering around our homes, visiting our hanging feeders and our bird baths, or picking up scraps from beneath the hedges. But how much do we really know about the birds we see so often? Over the next while, we'll introduce you to some of the familiar and not so familiar birds that share our gardens, try to help you understand their behaviour and learn how we can make our own outdoor spaces more welcoming for wildlife. Joining me here in the sunroom attached to Jim's house, Niall Hatch from Birdwatch Ireland and our cameraman Donald Glacken. We've got two cameras here trained on the feeders and the baths, and we'll be able to see, using monitors from inside the sunroom, what's going on outside in the garden. We don't want to disturb the birds in any way. I also want to say at this point that if you visit the website rte.ie/Mooney, you can either click on the live link from the garden or watch the visual version of this particular programme. The images are just spectacular, I can assure you of that. Now, Jim, thank you for having us in your home. Just to begin, will you give us a sense of the garden you've created here and why it works so well for wildlife?
Okay, the garden. We're here about 34 years now, and it has been transformed quite a bit since we arrived here first. It's now kind of set up primarily for wildlife. Okay. We like our bit of gardening, but we also like our wildlife. So it's a nice compromise, I think. We've developed things like we've 2 ponds in the garden. We've got a few bird baths in the garden as well. We have a number of bird boxes, nest boxes, and we have a bird table as well. So, and we've done a lot of planting to benefit the wildlife, not just the birds, but all creatures great and small in the garden.
How many hanging feeders have you got up?
We've got 2 hanging feeders on the south side of the house, and we have 2 hanging feeders on the north side of the house.
Okay.
That's it.
And you're lucky you're detached, yes. So the garden wraps around your home.
Absolutely. It does make a big difference. For someone who grew up without a garden, for any of you out there who were, saying, oh, it's all right for you, you've got a big garden. I had no garden when I started, but I hung a bird table in some woodland that I could see with my binoculars from the back of the house.
Right.
And I used to have to travel 8 or 10 minutes to actually top up the feeders. So don't be put off by the fact of maybe having a small garden or no garden. You can still get involved in helping the wildlife around you.
And a simple way to do it is by taking part in the Birdwatch Ireland Irish Garden Bird Survey 25-26. Niall, you might fill us in on the details there.
Absolutely, and thanks to Jim for kicking that all off all those many years ago. We have almost 4 decades worth of data now from this survey, and people all across Ireland and all 32 counties are taking part in this, sending in their data over a 13-week period. Now, it's running right till the end of February, so there's still plenty of time for people out there to take part in it, to let us know the species that are coming into their garden that they see each week, and also the the highest number they see at any one time each week. I know it sounds a little complex, but there's lots of instructions, but make sure they're on the website so people can check that out there. And when we get that data, that much from so many people across the country, it allows us to track the birds through the course of the winter, but also from year to year and also from decade to decade. We see winners, we see losers, we see changes because of climate change, because of new types of food coming to the gardens, and more people are getting into bird feeding. We're seeing it's becoming a really fast growing hobby, and it's really great then people can actually then also send that data back as citizen science to help the conservation of those birds and help us ornithologists know what's actually going on with the bird life and by extension the wider environment.
Okay, so what are the number 1 and number 2 and number 3 birds over the past 40 years?
Well, But very consistently, the top bird is, it comes as no surprise to a lot of people, it's the robin. Everyone loves the robin. The robin will come into gardens. Now, it's not the most numerous necessarily in gardens, but it's recorded in the most number of gardens, about 99% over the course of the 40 years. So what happens, though, is you normally will only have one or maybe two robins coming into your garden, whereas with other species further down the table, like your chaffinches, you will have none maybe, or you might have 10 or 12. So that's sort of the way it goes. But in terms of the number of gardens, it's your robin. Then in the second place, pretty consistently, it's the blackbird, a bird that tends to come into gardens, and we see a sort of actually an upswing in the numbers coming in towards the end of the survey. So sort of January, February, they're coming to gardens more and more, and we attribute that to the fact that a lot of the natural food, the wild berries and so on, they're starting to be depleted at that stage, and what happens then is they come into gardens to rely on the feeders. Apples are a great source of food for them, particularly. They love them. And number 3 is that favourite, the blue tit. They'll often come in, particularly the peanut feeders, very consistent in gardens. A lot of coming and going with them. And actually, people really have more blue tits coming into the garden than they realise. That's why in the survey, we don't ask people to try and estimate or count the absolute number of birds. It's the highest number they see at any one time. So that means we can't tell the sheer numbers of birds, but we can tell changes in the percentages of gardens that have them. And that's the really important part.
And what can you tell from the last 4 decades about the populations of those particular species, given that they've been 1, 2 and 3 rather consistently throughout?
We can tell that they are very well adapted to life in gardens, into a human altered landscape, and also that their populations are remaining remarkably steady. They're not going up, they're not going down. It means that they're doing very, very well. Now, that's not the case for a lot of birds, but when we see them in those top 3, they're doing brilliantly. We are seeing other winners and losers. That's the beauty of doing a survey over such a long period of time. Birds that at the start we thought would be common forever, like the greenfinch, it's gone way down over the last 10 years or so because of a disease. Likewise, we've seen the increase in numbers of things like grey spotted woodpecker. At the start of the survey, we never would have guessed that would be a common feature. I think it was in 12 counties in the survey last year, so it's really spreading. Wonderful to see it, and that's the power of citizen science. There's no way that any organisation like Birdwatch Ireland could do this by ourselves. We need to mobilise the public out there to do it for us, and it really makes a big difference.
When does it end?
It ends right up at the end of February, so still plenty of time to take part. Any data you can give us is extremely valuable. Also, what people tell us is they may start the survey thinking they can only identify the robin and the blackbird, but then they realise, oh, I know the magpie all right, and that one creeping on the ground, it looks a bit like a sparrow. Well, that's a dunnock, isn't it? And when people have a task to complete, it focuses the mind in a very special way, and before you know it, you become quite expert, and then you get your friends and family in. The one thing that people do tell us, a bit of a warning here, it gets incredibly addictive. People lose hours to this, but it's great because it's all contributing to a great cause, and you're learning while you do it.
Can you just tell me about the hanging feeders? What food have you put up there?
The basic food that we would put out are the peanuts, which a lot of our listeners
unsalted
would know. Unsalted,
and
absolutely.
Explain why.
Well, because salt is not something birds normally eat, and it can do all sorts of things to blood pressure and their kidneys or their renal function and all that sort of thing.
So it's definitely unsalted.
No, just pet grade peanuts. You can get them in any pet shop. That's for me the starter. Most people can do that. It's a clean, it's easy. You can hang a feeder anywhere, once the birds will find it.
Yeah.
Because there's bound to be someone within a kilometre radius that is already doing that. And as they fly over looking for more food, they go, I recognise those, they're peanuts, so they'll go for that. The next one then would be mixed seed. Often I would put it in with fat and make a seed cake, or sometimes they're sold as fat balls, they're called. So that's a mixture of seed and fat, and that's really high energy food for the birds in the winter. So we do that, sometimes just the seed on its own and also in the fat. And then finally, the other one we mainly put out is Niger seed. Niger seeds are tiny little black seeds, but goldfinches absolutely go crazy for them. I think it resembles one of their natural food sources, which is the teasel, those very spiky-headed plants that look like they're from another galaxy. But inside those spikes, there's a little black seed. And if you tap the head of a teasel, you'll get these little black seeds in your hand, and they're very similar to Niger seeds. And their beaks are designed to deal with opening them and feeding on them.
Right.
So that's why they like Niger seed. That's my understanding anyway.
Now, I know you have a little blackboard with all the birds marked up. So how many birds have you seen in your garden this year?
Yeah.
How many different species
the species, last count was 22.
Ooh.
22. And as Niall alluded to, not only can it be addictive, it can be competitive. because I had 2 robins this morning and you've only had 1 all week, this sort of thing. And it's brilliant because really then when you are looking out, you're kind of counting everything to see, can we find more? And because we've got feeders on the south side of the house and the north side, if you see 2 chaffinches on the north side, I dash across to see are there any more on this side so we can increase the total, or is it, which I've seen because I was up actually with my son Peter, we were putting up a little weather station on the roof of the house, tiny little thing, we got it at Christmas, and we were on the flat roof here and you could see the birds actually going from that feeder over to the other side, so they'd move from feeder to feeder.
Oh, okay.
Very interesting.
So I suppose at this point we might as well have a look and see what's actually coming to the hanging feeders. Well, actually on the table I can see the most beautiful robin, not moving at full speed because of the setting Donal has on his camera. Actually, I should probably, for the benefit of the people who'll be watching this online, ask Donal what way he set the camera up. Donal.
Well, yeah, I set the camera to slow motion. With bird feeders, the birds come and go quite a lot. So just to ensure we've picture at maximum duration, I've set the camera to 150 frames a second. So just to ensure that the viewers can get maximum duration in pictures, 1 second would be the equivalent to maybe 6 seconds in real time. So it just means we can have plenty of picture for the viewers to watch. And you get to see really spectacular detail in the birds' movements as well.
Thank you very much indeed, Donal, because when the birds come to the hanging feeder, or if they come to the table or the bath, they don't hang around because they don't want to be hit by a predator, so they're in and they're out. So that's the reason when you look at it on the video, if you're going to watch it there, but you're going to get the most amazing images. And really looking at this robin now, Jim, you can see that red breast. And again, it was the number 1 bird in the survey.
And has been, I think, pretty much consistently since the beginning. And the shot we're looking at now is it's feeding on the ground. It's taking some seed off the ground. I don't normally put seed on the ground, but for the
Cane fall.
Well, it can attract
rodents.
Exactly, and I mean, we touch wood. We've been very lucky. We haven't had any crawling up the table or even around the garden. I just would stop if that, because there is a limit. But for the sake of this program, so that we could definitely get birds on the ground, I said we'd put out a small amount of feed.
Because some birds are ground feeders, are they not?
Exactly. One of the main differences between ground feeders and ones that are arboreal or ones that are found in trees and bushes and other places is they don't have the same capacity for grip, and that they're not as acrobatic. And also, generally, they have bigger eyes proportionately, because they're hunting a lot by sight, whereas a lot of the aerial ones, they're looking for insects under leaves and things like that. You often see like birds like, a warbler in the summer or a goldcrest in the winter, and it looks like they're gardeners in minute. They're checking every leaf for an insect, whereas the ones on the ground, they tend to actually, most of them are able to run, which most perching birds can't. Like the wagtail is the classic. It runs all the time.
And it wags its tail.
Yeah, whereas the robin is a kind of an
It's a hopper.
Yeah, and the robin is kind of an in-between. It hops like most perching birds, but it's still able to hop along on the ground too. So that's what makes it so versatile as well, and probably why it's number 1.
And I think also it's one of the birds that people are most likely to recognise. Everybody knows the robin, so it's not surprised that most people are recording them in their gardens. It's one that there's no mystery about. There's no coincidence there either, because one of the secrets to the robin's success is that it's more tolerant of humans than most other birds. And when we see them at the feeders, be it on the bird table itself, on the ground below the table, or on the hanging feeders, the robins will give all of those a shot. But the issue with it is that they're not as agile as, let's say, a blue tit would be. They're not as dominant as a blackbird would be. That would chase it away from the food. But what the robin will do is it will come close to people. It's like we have a force field around us that repels the competitor birds, but also it repels the predators as well. The robins seem to realise that the likes of the sparrowhawks and the foxes aren't going to come near humans either. And that's one of the reasons why they follow people around the garden so much and hop around after us. And we humans, we have this desire to be loved, so we think, it's our friend, it loves us, but actually it's exploiting us. We're giving it protection, and that gives it a look in. And I'm sure a lot of people have experienced that, to have a robin follow them or come close to them. Sometimes they'll even come and take food from your hand if it's a cold day and you're very, very patient. And that's the way the robins have evolved. That's something we only see with them in Ireland and and in Britain mainly, because on the continent where robins also occur and they're very common, they're more a bird of the woodland there. They're shyer. They don't tend to tolerate people quite so much. And in fact, they're more likely to follow a different animal there. They follow wild boar rather than humans. That's the association sort of built up there. But it's also no surprise that they're garden favourite because they are beautiful birds. They look beautiful. They sound beautiful. There's just something so endearing about them.
They follow the boar for a reason because it's churning up the ground, isn't it?
That's it.
So they're feeding on the little worms and larvae, whatever else may be in there.
That's right. And the boar and the robin, they're no threat to each other. They're not competitors for the same food. So the boar tolerate the robin. The robin is no problem and it follows them around. And of course, in Ireland and in Britain, where we have no wild boar anymore, well, humans digging in the garden or in
the
fields.
farmer.
Yeah, the farmer. Just
Not to suggest that the farmer is a boar.
But it's been the next best option. And so that tameness has sort of evolved.
But how do you feel about people feeding them from their hand? Because Jim recently had a friend of his local man who was feeding robins from his hand and getting the most amazing images. I'm sure we'll be able to drop the image in to this programme as well so people can see it. Richie Ryan, his name is.
I think it can be a wonderful thing if it's done the right way. Absolutely. You want to make be the bird's choice. So the bird, you build up that confidence, that trust. Don't look directly at it. Let the bird come to your hand to take it. And there's something magic about it. I wish that people of all ages, especially young children, could experience this at least once in their lives, because it's a moment you will never forget when a wild bird trusts you enough to come to your hand and take food from you. It's astonishing. The other thing as well, I remember as a 7-year-old myself having this experience in the garden. When it lands on your hand, if you're not looking at it, you barely notice it because they weigh almost nothing, and it makes you realize actually the struggle they have to survive in the winter, like the amount of threat that must come from lack of food and from cold weather. It's astonishing they can survive, and not just survive but thrive, because they do very well.
All right, let's see what else has come in there. There's got a beautiful blackbird. We've been speaking about it already. You said that it comes in the top 3 of the surveys every year and has done for the last 4 decades. Very obvious bird in the garden.
It is. It's one that people tend to notice because it's a good bit larger than a lot of the other common birds you'd see coming to the feeders. It's another classic ground feeder, although they will eat lots of berries on trees. They love to come to apples as well. You get them on top of the bird table, but not really a bird you'll see on the hanging feeders. They're too big and a little bit too awkward for that. Really built for life on the ground. This here's the male that we're looking at. We can tell that because, first of all, it's strikingly jet black plumage. Just black, black, black. Well, the feathers at least are black, but look at the colour there of the ring around the eyes and the beak. Now, many blackbirds, the males, you'll see that being a nice yellow colour. This is a particularly stonking shade of almost carrot orange. So this bird has been eating a very healthy diet. I think it's got lots of these carotenoids, these colour pigments in it. Indicates very good health because they also use those to boost their immune system. So the birds tend to have very colourful oranges and yellows and reds in their plumage and in their soft parts, as we call them, like the eye rings and the beak and so on. They are they're usually in very good health, and it's been very well looked after in this garden because not only is the food here that Jim is putting out, but it's full of natural foods as well. There are lots of berries, lots of seeds, lots of other things too. So planting for birds, a really important way to benefit them. Also helps some of the birds that don't come to feeders and feed more on insects. Another thing you'll see that the blackbird will do in gardens too, they like to feed on worms. That's one of their favourite foods of all. So as we're transitioning now more towards the spring and the breeding season, you'll see them focusing more on those, and they're the ultimate protein bomb, I suppose, for their chicks. Very prevalent in gardens and usually number 2 in the Irish Garden Bird Survey every year. Very consistent species that's doing very, very well all across the country and indeed all across Europe. It's a very common bird Europe-wide.
And there was a lot of rain this morning, Jim, before recording this programme, so perfect conditions for the worms to come to the surface, I would have thought.
Absolutely perfect. You're dead right, Derek. And it's been mild. It's been up and down, cold and mild, but mild at the moment. And with the rain, it brings the natural foods near the surface. And we tend to leave our garden a little bit untidy from a gardener's point of view. We leave the leaf litter out. Even on the edges of the pathways or that, we will leave it there once it's not in the way, because often it's under leaves that they will find most of their food, because often that is where their prey, like the worms and some of the larvae of various mini creatures, will like to be near the surface but under leaves. So you'll often see the blackbird rooting away along the side of the path, or you'll see it out on the grass as well. I know for some gardeners they get a bit annoyed because they might have swept the paths, and next thing you come out the following morning and there's soil and leaves all over it, and it's because a blackbird has been busily hunting for these mini creatures to eat. So that's really, really important for them too. But you'll find the same bird will come down, might come to seed on a table. and then it'll immediately hop down and start feeding on worms and stuff. It's not like it becomes addicted to just the food you're putting out. They have the ability to come and go, and they know how to mix their diet, which is really, really good. And as Niall rightly said, we're obviously doing something right, because this bird is just magnificent.
It really is, and it just shows that having a very varied and very rich diet. That's actually one of the secrets of the blackbird's success, and one of the reasons why as a species it's doing so well. It's not overly specialised on one kind of food. They can switch to many different food sources, so when the worms disappear because of the weather or the temperature or whatever, they can then switch to seed or to berries. They can even eat things like spiders and invertebrates if they need to, and so they do very, very well from that point of view. They haven't overly specialised. They cope very well with anything that we humans can throw at them. If you contrast that with, say, members of the finch family who only eat seeds, but if the seeds disappear for whatever reason, they have a big problem. And we also have issues with other members of the thrush family, or they have the issues. The blackbird, of course, is a member of the thrush family. Some of the thrushes that migrate in from overseas, they don't even know what food in the garden feeders is, and they will starve to death in the garden even though there's food all around them. Not the blackbird. It's copped on. It knows what we humans do for it, but it also knows that gardens are safe places. They tend to be that bit warmer than the surrounding countryside in the depths of winter, safer from predators. So blackbirds are onto a good thing in Irish gardens.
I'm just thinking that all of the birds that I see coming and going to the feeders and to the patio and to the bath, they're very, very clean. Oh, it's a female blackbird. Okay, so we've got the male and the female. So here comes the female. Now that's very good.
Yeah, that's excellent to get both the male and the female.
Remind people, Jim, the male is black.
The male is black, usually black, with the orange beak. The female is usually chocolate brown. Not as dark on the underside, can even sometimes look a little bit spotty, almost like a thrush, which of course, as Niall said, they're members of that family. The male, when it's molting or when its feathers get old, go from black to brown. Don't panic. The main thing is, if there's any jet black feathers in the plumage, it is almost certainly a male.
And the giveaway is that bill as well, isn't it? If you look at the orange bill and it's a large bird, you can pretty much tell it's most likely a blackbird, so it's probably the male or the female, if you can't quite distinguish.
And like you were saying, Niall, these are particularly healthy birds because this bird's beak is surprisingly bright in colour, isn't that right now?
That's right. A lot of the females, you won't see it as bright as that. Some females just have completely brown bills with a little tinge of yellow in them. This one, again, it's almost like a carrot. So this is one of the most colourful billed female blackbirds I've seen in a long time. But you can clearly see the plumage, even though it's dark, it's not what you would say jet black. No. You can see that it is brown. Some females, again, are paler than that. And actually, female blackbirds are very, very variable in colour. But the size, shape, behaviour, that's how you know them.
Now, those birds are very clean, which is what I was about to say before that female came in there. And you've got bird baths out there. So do all of the birds visit the baths and have a little bit of a dip and a wash?
It's amazing, Derek. The pond, we have it set up so that there's a gradient so that birds of all sizes can get in without having to jump in the deep end.
And can get out again.
And can get out again. And also then we have a number of bird baths, which are basically saucers. With either stones in them or they're shallow enough so that the birds can get in and out. Not vertical sides with deep water. They won't use that at all. And we get as much, if not more, traffic to water as we do to the feeders. And so if there's anybody out there who's not too keen on putting out food, you can definitely go to town on putting out receptacles for the birds to come and drink and also wash. And they do that all year round.
Yeah, and how often do you change the water out there?
Well, in the pond,
not at all.
God does that. Yeah, but on that, if it's in a small bird bath, at least once a week.
Yeah,
just
so
to be on the safe side.
Hygiene is important.
Hygiene is vital. If you want to treat them like your pets, that's quite okay. But you have to look after them like you would any other pet, a cat or a dog. And in fact, you end up spending less time than you would with a cat or a dog. And when you go on holidays, they look after themselves. There's no problem there. But it is very true, the hygiene. You wouldn't be giving your dog or cat food that is after going off or anything like that. And it's the same with the birds. You have to treat it exactly the same way and make sure everything is kept as clean as possible.
All right, well, I'm just getting a nod from Donald to look at the hanging feeder camera, and we can see there's a goldfinch just after coming in there. Oh, beautiful.
Another one of the most beautiful birds we have, like them all. I mean, that red face, golden plumage, if you see it in the sunshine. It's a lovely sort of a sandy brown colour. You can see those breast patches either side of the pale breast, and then it's also on the back, that colour. They're just magnificent. And when they fly, then you get this burst of yellow, this beautiful, pure, bright yellow, which is on the wings and the tail, and they're just fantastic. And I mean, this one now, we were looking through the window at this time. That's why you might be wondering what all the lines are above. If you've got a nice clean window, you can get great shots. Here comes the second one. Look at the yellow. Oh, look at that. Oh my God, that was fantastic. And now a closer view, and it's Niger seeds. You can see those little black seeds. It has been raining, so a few of them are after sticking to the side of the feeder. But these birds, the beak is like a finch, like all the other finches, but it's got a narrower point on it, which means they can specialise in taking out seeds like the Niger seed, and in the wild it's the teasel, the spiky plant that we have here in Ireland.
It's a beautiful image because, Niall, it shows us clearly how that locking mechanism works for the feet and the legs. You might describe that for the listener now as well.
Yes, people often ask, like, how do birds manage to maintain their grip? And if you think of a bird like that will also sleep like that, perched up in a tree, on a branch or something like that, gripping onto it. And the thing is, with birds, it's quite different from a human hand, let's say, gripping. For us to grip something, you have to physically think or move your muscles to actually contract and actually grasp it. And to let go, you have to consciously make that decision. For birds, it's completely the opposite. The default is that they grasp their feet and they have to then consciously open them. So the default is that they will just grip on. And so that bird's not even thinking about it. It means it can keep an eye out for predators all the time, trying to find those lovely seeds. And they've got the Niger seed in the feeder, but they'll also switch to the wild seeds as well. You'll also see the birds queuing up for the feeders too, because there's only a limited amount of space there, and so sometimes the more dominant ones in the flock, and goldfinches are flocking in the winter, they will wait for the other ones to come in. Absolutely stunning birds. They really are gorgeous. Male and female look pretty much identical. There's one tiny difference. The female we see on the screen there at the moment, I can tell that because the red just goes just not quite the back of her eye on her head, whereas the male, it just goes slightly behind the eye. That's literally the only difference you'll see. A charming little bird to see in the garden, and indeed that is the collective noun for the goldfinches, a charm of goldfinches.
Oh, really? Is it? A charm of goldfinches?
Yeah, very apt indeed. And who wouldn't want that beautiful creature in their garden? Beautiful song as well. So as we transition towards the springtime, it really just it's such a jubilant, jolly song. It's a gorgeous creature. You can see there when it turns its head into profile there, you can see just how sharp that beak is. Like all members of the finch family, it has a conical beak, much stronger at the base than, let's say, the beak of the robin that we were seeing earlier. That's for crushing seed. But unlike most of the other finches that we would see around the garden, as Jim was saying there, the very fine tip means it can reach between the spines of spiky plants like the teasel without getting the risk of one of those spikes getting stuck in its eye. The other finches can't do that so well, so it means that where you get lots of teasel or indeed lots of Niger seed feeders in the garden which mimic them, the goldfinches do extremely well. And actually in the Irish Garden Bird Survey, when the survey started all those years ago, this bird was present only in 4% of the gardens in that first year. Last winter they were in 79% of the gardens in the survey. So something has changed over the course of almost 40 years, that this bird, we can't say necessarily it's become more common nationally, but certainly it's becoming far more common in gardens. And that could be because of Niger seed. It's because they've learned that bird tables and bird feeders mean food. And before Niger seed came on the scene, they would regularly eat peanuts as well. They still do, but they much prefer the Niger seed. And sometimes you see them squabbling and bickering with each other on the feeders.
You can see it there. They're having a little bit of an argument. I was going to ask you, Jim, are they social creatures? Do they mind sharing from the same table?
Well, let's say
hanging feeders.
I use the analogy of, just because a restaurant is full of people doesn't mean they're all friends. They're there because that's where the food is, and they might be polite to each other and all that, but if someone reached over from the table next to you at a restaurant and decided to grab your minute steak or whatever it is, I don't think you'd be very happy with that. Same here. They're watching the other birds. They don't want anyone to knock them off their perch and take their place. And you'll notice they open the beak and they open their wings as a threat. And the other one, so long as it stays on that side, the one on the left, there's no problem. In fact, most birds on feeders, they like to avoid eye contact. And once they avoid eye contact, they seem to do fine. But as soon as they catch sight of another bird, then they can get very upset about that.
All right, and just for the benefit of those who've just joined us, you're listening to a Mooney Goes Wild special celebrating garden birds, and we're broadcasting from Jim Wilson's sunroom in Cobh in County Cork. We're commenting on what we can see on a video stream that we have, a live video stream up on rte.ie/Mooney, but we have a cameraman here, Donald, and on the monitor he's showing us pictures of various birds coming to the hanging feeders and feeding around the garden at various locations, and we have bird bats and everything else. And I think we have, it's an unusual bird, it looks a bit like a sparrow, but it's not quite a sparrow. I'm not quite sure what it is there. What is that bird?
It's a linnet.
A linnet.
Very rare. We had 2 of them before Christmas on one day, and I'm amazed. I've never seen them on the Niger feeder. I've only seen them a handful of times in the garden. A finch as well, and they're ones you often see on thistles, not to be confused with teasels. The thistle, most people are familiar with the thistle, which produces copious amounts of feathery looking seeds or seed apparatuses in the autumn. Amazing. What do you think, Niall? I mean, that's just fantastic.
Jim, that's a great record for the Birdwatch Ireland Garden Bird Survey. It's great to see it, and it's one that actually we've seen steadily increasing in gardens in the last, let's say, 10-15 years, paralleling the decline of the greenfinches in gardens. And so it seems that the greenfinches may have been excluding the slightly smaller linnets from the gardens, and they're taking advantage of it. Unusual to see it there on a Niger seed feeder, and you can see there very clearly in the shot the beak of this bird. It's not quite so sharp as that of the goldfinch. It's harder for it to get those seeds out, not quite so efficient. It's managing it, but it's not quite so good at it. And this bird in the wild, well, the name linnet, it's connected with linen because it was associated with the seeds of the flax plant. And actually the Latin name of it, it tells you something about its other food. So Linaria cannabina, so the flax plant and also the hemp or cannabis plant would feed on the seeds of those. So a bird that was actually very much associated with textile agriculture.
Sorry, Niall, again, just to remind you, you can actually go to the website rte.ie/Mooney and look at the visual version of this program, because what it did was it moved around the hanging feeder and it knocked the goldfinch off its perch, and they've now switched sides and the goldfinch is closest to us now. But earlier you might have noticed something, it was brushing something off. It looked like something had pooped on it, I think. One of the other birds. Is it a common linnet? I ask you for a reason. Is that the name, the common linnet?
Yes, so traditionally it would have been the linnet, but the common linnet to distinguish it from linnets in other parts of the world, like the Yemen linnet or species like that, yes.
Do you remember the Eurovision Song Contest 2014, the Dutch entry, the common linnets, the name of the group?
That's it, yes. It came second, if I recall correctly.
It did indeed, and they got their name because linnets, where they're from in the eastern part of the Netherlands, the bird there is known as the canoe, Kneu, and high canooters, which is a kind of endearing term for people from that part of the world, you know, kind of folksy, and they were kind of folk singers, and they were fantastic. The common linnets, look them up. Anyway, these two birds are fantastic.
Yeah, and it wasn't actually poop. It was actually it's been raining.
Oh, is that what it was?
There's some of the raindrops that have been coming down off the side of the bird table, because there's other birds up above on the table as it is, and they're knocking the drops off, and just a little bit of a shower there.
But this shot is absolutely fantastic, Donald. So I mean, we're just looking at the birds in the hanging feeder, and you can't see anything behind.
You wouldn't, we're fairly zoomed in there, so the more you zoom in, the more depth of field you get on the camera. If you go a lot tighter, the background tends to blur out quite a bit, and that gives you really good sharp focus, nice clear image on the birds. As well as at the background there, it's kind of nice foliage there, so it's kind of less distracting.
And despite the rain and the kind of odd weather, they really are looking terrific. I mean, just look at the way that linnet is eating and having a look around. They are terrific images.
They really are, and you can see at this sort of slow-mo, you see the feeding action in a way that's very hard to see with the naked eye.
You'd never see it.
You never would, and you can see how they're actually taking the husks off those and using their tongues to manipulate the seed in their mouth, and they spit out the skin of it or the husk of it, and they eat the kernel inside. And they can do it very, very rapidly, far faster than the human eye could register. But here, at this much slowed down speed, we can see it very, very well, shaking the bits out there. And you can also see the real contrast between the shape of the beak of the linnet and that of the goldfinch. They're quite different. The greenfinch is so much sharper, like a little pair of tweezers, needle-nose pliers maybe going in. The linnet bulkier, but you can also see a bigger bird, more dominant as well, and would bully the goldfinch if it came to it. It would probably win in a fight between the two. Great to see them side by side like this and have this contrast that people can see for themselves. And that's a good way to actually get to know your garden birds. There's one, let's say there's one you know, such as the the goldfinch, quite a distinctive bird. If you can compare the bird you see to it, it's a good way to learn. It really makes a difference. So stick with what you know, and then you can gradually expand your knowledge as you go on.
All right, what have we got now?
Blue tit here, Derek, and it's on camera 2.
Okay, so we have 2 cameras out, so there's a blue tit there. I'm very familiar with the blue tits nesting in my garden since I moved in over 22 years ago.
Yes, they use nest boxes. It's the one species that uses them more than any other in Ireland. Number 3 in our Irish Garden Bird Survey list, so a very common bird across the country. And as we can see here, they love peanuts. Peanut feeders are a great way to attract them in. Also, they love to eat caterpillars, particularly in the breeding season. So actually in my garden, I plant what I call my sacrificial cabbages. So the white butterflies come down and lay their eggs, and then the blue tits have a feast. But at this time of year, there's a second one come in there now. And often they'll squabble a bit with each other. So it'll be interesting to see if there's a detente between them, because we're not in the breeding season just yet, and the male and female, they don't really cooperate. So we'll see. Plenty of food there, though.
Let it bleu. What would it be in French?
It's mésange bleu. But here we see there's plenty of peanuts there, and that's the beauty of these mesh feeders. They can actually find lots of surface area to feed on them. And it's also a way to sort of control the diet as well. If the peanuts were out loose, well, first of all, there's a risk birds could choke on them, but also all sorts of things would eat them, and they'd be devoured pretty quickly. Even things like foxes and badgers would come and feed on them. But here the blue tits, you can see how agile they are as well. Far more so than the birds we've been seeing up until now, especially birds like the robin and the blackbird. They couldn't really hack it on a feeder like this. Blue tits, it's no bother to them. Very endearing. And I think that sometimes with birds, we can forget just how beautiful some Irish birds are. If that blue tit, with all of that, the lovely green on the back, the yellow on the chest, the lovely blue on top of the head, it's such a pretty pattern. If this was a rare bird, I think people would be tripping over themselves to try and get glimpses of them. But because we all have them in our gardens and they're so common, I think, I won't say familiarity breeds contempt, because people still like them, but we can take them for granted, but actually they're stunning. And this is one of the species that a lot of people who visit Ireland as bird watchers from outside Europe, this is the one they want to see. This and the goldfinch. They're so colourful, and luckily they're pretty easy to find as well. There are gardens everywhere.
And they're just pecking at those nuts, Jim, so they're just getting a little bit of each nut each time they peck.
Yeah, actually, when you watch them for a while, you'll realise that what they want to do as well is try and extract a piece that they can take away and eat in a nearby bush or branch. So they'll peck away and take their look, and it's gone. So now that one will go to a bush which we have nearby, which is usually a staging post for all the birds that come to the feeder, and there it is. That's the same bird.
Oh, well done,
on the bush. Yeah, Donald, that's fantastic. And you can see they're always on the lookout. They never just like us put our heads down until the dinner is over. They're always on the lookout in case there's a predator. But it will now eat that piece of peanut, and when it's finished, it'll fly back over. It'll take little bits and eat those until it gets a piece that's small enough that they can pull out through the mesh, and it'll fly off again.
And to remind everybody again, unsalted.
Unsalted, absolutely. Yeah. But stunning little bird.
What I was noticing was the tail, because I've seen blue tits for years and years. Yeah. I haven't really noticed the tail so much. So they've got the stumpy little body, and the tail just kind of looks a little bit small for the stumpy body.
Yes, you tend to associate longer tails with more aerial birds that need a lot of stability in the sky. So when they're flying, they need to steer. Think of a magpie, for example. They're very good at sort of gliding and swooping around. Blue tits aren't birds that are built for soaring. They dash in and out of the bushes. They're not in flight generally for more than a few seconds at a time. So they're very agile. They don't need such a long tail. It could even be a hindrance if they're going through the thorn bushes, the hawthorns and so on. That could be a problem for them. Also, it would make it harder to fit inside the nesting cavities where they nest. So you often find birds that are cavity nesters inside a hole in a tree or a nest box, they tend to have shorter tails. There's a bird called the long-tailed tit, the one tit that doesn't use a nest box, and part of that is they need a different type of nest because of their tails. Watching the blue tit there, the way it's feeding too, there's something very parrot-like about the way it uses its foot. It's actually grasping that morsel of peanut in its toes and holding it. You won't see most birds doing that. They tend to just sort of manipulate things with their beak. You'll see blackbirds throwing things around to try break them up. The blue tit, it's a very smart bird, they know they can just grip it in their foot and actually use their beak to feed, just like a parrot would. So it's different styles for different birds. They're very different when you get to know them.
If you're wondering why we're not whispering, we are indoors. We are sitting at the dining table in Jim's sunroom looking out at the birds. We have monitors here so we can see which birds are coming to the tables and around the garden, the baths or the hanging feeders, so we're able to pick and choose. So let's have a look at the other camera. Let's see what's on camera 1. Let's say it like that. It's a little brown job. An LBJ,
it is LBJ, little brown job. Yeah. This one causes a bit of grief for people starting out with bird watching. It's the dunnock. And you'd be forgiven for thinking it's a sparrow, because it has kind of sparrow colours and it's kind of sparrow sized. But when you see it up close, it doesn't have that big finch-like beak that sparrows have. It's also much slimmer, but it stays on the ground all the time. It'll go up to on a feeder occasionally, but by and large, it likes to be on the ground. And you'll often get it under feeders or nearby feeders. They kind of just skulk along, and they don't often stay out in the open much. They don't like to be far from cover either. They usually like to be able to hop under a bush nearby if they think there's danger coming.
There's a sparrow on the feeder now, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a house sparrow, and that's part of the confusion because the dunnock used to be known as the hedge sparrow, but the name's fallen out of favour because, as Jim was saying, the dunnock, the hedge sparrow, isn't a sparrow at all. But on the feeder, you can see clearly there the difference, particularly in the shape of the beak. So the dunnock we saw a moment ago has this very thin beak, really the beak of an insect eater that will eat some seeds occasionally, whereas that big chunky finch-like beak, much stouter on the sparrow, that's the beak of really an obligate seed eater. They use them for crushing those husks and eating the kernels inside. There's also more patterning, I think, on when you see the house bird, the female house bird is what we're looking at here. There's more sort of creamy, sort of almost beige stripe above the eye. There's more patterning on the back. It's not such a dark coloured brown and grey bird, so it is quite distinctive, and also much more likely to be up on the feeders. You won't see a dunnock on the feeders, although you will see house sparrows on the ground. If you saw one side by side with a dunnock, you'd see that actually that the house sparrow is actually a chunkier bird. It looks a bit like a dunnock on steroids, really, sort of a bodybuilder type. And the dunnocks, they tend to be a bit more docile. They're really gorgeous birds, both of them, but in a subtle way. You have to get your eye in on them.
Beautiful close-up of the dunnock. It's obvious that this does not look like a sparrow, as Niall rightly pointed out. Also, the dunnock is much darker underneath overall. As you can see, that the patterning on it when you see it up close is really lots of streaks and that on it. And the head doesn't have that kind of bright pale eye stripe that you'd get on a female sparrow. Absolutely beautiful bird. But one that kind of, I always think of it as a bird that minds its own business when it's not into, chasing other birds away that often. It tends to just go about its business almost in the background.
It's a very unobtrusive species, that's right. And one of the things we see actually in the Birdwatch Ireland Irish Garden Bird Survey each year, sometimes people will make a mistake and they say, I had a flock of like 15 dunnocks in the garden. And that's the thing, you won't see big groups of them. You might see two if you're lucky, but they won't be squabbling with each other. They're far more docile. They're almost subservient to the other birds, I would say. They give way. And in many ways, they remind me a little bit of a rodent. They creep on the ground like little mice. They dash out to get the food. Particularly towards dusk, they might come out and get some of the things that have fallen from the bird table, but they won't be up there squabbling with the finches and the sparrows. They give them a wide berth.
Speaking of finches, I can see now a chaffinch there, Jim. The chaffinch.
That's true, which again, that's a female, and superficially you might think it looks a little like a sparrow, especially a female house sparrow. And in fact, what you're looking for there is that there's a lot of white on the chaffinch that there isn't on the sparrow. There's broad white wing patches when it flies, and it has white outer tail feathers, so when it flies off you get this flash of white, long white feathers on the outside of the tail, unlike the house sparrow, which has just a plain brown tail. It also proportionately longer, but it does have the chunky finch-like beak, the same as the house sparrow. Fantastic to see those as well today.
And back to the feeder just before we finish up, a great tit, Niall.
Yes, another one of those common birds you get coming into gardens. Superficially very similar to the blue tit, however it's lacking blue. So they both have a green back and a yellow chest, but the great tit has a solidly black head apart from white cheek patches, and the blue tit has with the stripe through the eye and then white above the eye. So if there's white above the eye, it's a blue tit. If there's no white above the eye, then you're looking at the great tit. And they're a bit of a bully at the bird table. They will push the blue tits out of the way. They're that bit bigger, they're stouter, they have a stronger beak, but the tits move around so much. They're coming, going all the time. Everyone does eventually get a look in. And male and female look extremely similar. The best way to tell them apart is that both of them have a big black stripe down the centre of the chest, but on the male it's substantially wider, particularly up near the throat and especially down towards where its legs are. are. On the female, it's more uniform and thin. So that's why you can tell them apart. And they kind of vary a bit in colour intensity. Some are very vividly yellow, some are a little bit duller than that. And that's actually tied to fitness. It tends to do with how well they're feeding, how strong their immune systems are. And we know that both the male and the female are attracted to partners that are the most vibrant in terms of colour. So getting a lot of food during the winter in preparation for the breeding season, it makes a big difference in terms of breeding success for these birds.
Yeah, I mean, they're just fabulous birds, and as you say, they're kind of more bullyish than the blue-tit. Also, in the autumn, when the young ones fledge, so you'll see a bird that looks like a great tit, but looks like its colours are all washed out, and it's the same for the blue tit. So that in the autumn they're not so bright in colour, especially the young ones. And then we have a house sparrow with a white feather in its wing. That's an individual that we can now follow, and I haven't seen that bird all winter.
Oh, so the house sparrow, I can see it now. I can see the white. Oh, it's very visible.
That's amazing. And what it means is there's obviously more than the 9 or 10 sparrows we've been counting every week, because that bird has not been in our garden before. And the beauty of having a bird with a specific coloration is you can follow that individual. Niall, that's leucism, I think they call it, is it?
It is. So leucism is something that occurs in any bird or indeed any animal or plant, and it's where it's missing some but not all of the normal pigment. So if it was missing all of the pigment, including in its eyes and its feathers, then it would be an albino bird. That's albinism. This bird is leucistic or leucistic. It's just got that one white feather. It could be predominantly white. You sometimes see that with blackbirds, but it will allow you to track that individual. This is a male house sparrow, by the way. We can see that it's got this grey crown, unlike the female, black sort of little goatee beard patch. So it's quite distinctive from that point of view. And as we get to the breeding season, we'll also see that more and more of that black. Some will have more black than others. It's all controlled by testosterone, and the ones that have the biggest black patches are the more dominant in their flocks and are more attractive to the females. It'll be interesting to see if they're attracted to a male that has an unusual wing pattern.
Would it put them off, do you think?
Well, it'd be interesting to see. We don't know.
I mean, there's been lots of records of leucistic and albino birds pairing up with birds that are not, ordinary colours. They do say often that they'll stand out a bit more to a predator. If you've got a flock of sparrows which all look kind of brown, and there's one there with that white wing feather, it will probably be attracted to that quicker than it would be to all the other ones, which will blend in with the foliage in the background. So they do tend to think that they may not live as long because they're standing out that bit more.
We've time for one last bird, and it's a starling on the hanging feeder, and it's spooked off the house sparrow with the white feather.
That's right. It's just chased it off. I'm sure it'll get a look in again, but you can see there, actually, you would give way if you were a sparrow to a bird like a starling. It's way, way bigger. Look at that beak. You don't want to be on the receiving end of a peck from that. But looking at it zoomed in like this, you can see just how beautiful a starling is. They're absolutely stunning. I think it's a bird that people underappreciate within Ireland. We think they're making a bit of a mess, making noise, gathering together in flocks. But they do two things that are amazing. First of all, they have this amazing metallic plumage. They're stunning. And then they make those winter murmurations, which for my money is one of the most thrilling things you will ever see in nature. And great to see them here at a feeder. Jim, these could be birds that are bred locally, or they could have come as far away from like the Baltic Sea. They travel quite a bit to Ireland in the winter.
It is amazing. We have our own local starlings that stay with us all year round, and in the winter then they're joined by thousands and thousands of starlings from, as you say, places as far away as the Baltic. And the one we're looking at the moment is a female. It has a pale base to the beak. There's also males in the garden at the moment, and you can tell them because they have a very pale blue colour to the base of the beak. But aren't they just absolutely stunning? And I've heard people say, I don't want starlings, they chase all the small birds away. Those small birds are kind of tough as well. And the starlings, believe it or not, we have found from watching them and looking and doing the garden bird survey, they come in a gang, they stay for 5 minutes or so, and then they all fly off again. They don't actually stay there all day and dominate the whole table for the whole day. And that's when the other birds get a chance to come in and feed. So everybody gets a place at the table.
Yeah, we've been chatting for quite a while now, and these are the first starlings we've seen. The other birds have had a look in. They'll move on soon, and everything will come and go in the feeder. There's a lot more sort of turnover of birds than you would expect, and those starlings may go off. They may fly far away. They may not come back for another week. The sparrows are waiting. And the great thing, Jim, in your garden, you have so many plants around. There's plenty of hiding places, waiting places for the birds to queue up. Well, they're nice and safe from predators as well.
Did you see the goldfinch come in there?
I did, yeah.
I thought better of it. I said,
it kind of said,
I
don't think so.
Not hanging around. Anyway, we can't hang around. That's pretty much all we have time for for today. Don't forget to visit the website anytime you like. It's rte.ie/Mooney, and you can watch, as I've said, the visual version of this programme. You can watch it back. So I want to say thank you to Jim for having us down. Thank you very much indeed, Jim.
Our pleasure.
To Niall Hatch of Birdwatch Ireland, thank you, Niall.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And tell people to get the results in from the Garden Bird Survey when?
You want to have them in, well, we say by the 1st of April. It runs till the end of February. Still plenty of time to take part. But once you've done the survey, please do send Birdwatch Ireland the data. That's the most important bit. We need to track those birds, and you can play your part.
And Donald, thank you for all the good work.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me again, Derek.
Yeah, delighted to have you. So go to the website rte.ie/Mooney, watch the visual version of this programme, and watch the live stream from Jim Wilson's garden from dawn to dusk every day for the next few weeks. And you can send emails to Mooney at rte.ie if you have any questions. We'll do our best to answer them. Okay, that's pretty much all we have time for. We'll be back on RTÉ Radio 1 again tonight with another Mooney Goes Wild, okay? Talk to you then. Goodbye.
Bye.